starting the webcam.
Okay.
And David, I guess it's a little late. I did text with him earlier.
Oh, good. Okay, I just sent an email as well. I have a prompt, Jeremy, on my screen that asks, that says I'm in a practice session and do I want to start the webinar?
Yeah,
but
I'm starting the webinar right now.
That's your job. Yeah, good. Okay, I'll disregard that.
Co-host, so you have the prompt as well.
Very good. Welcome.
Hey guys, I'm just testing my mic. Doesn't work.
I think
but don't change your mic. Speak.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Now we can. It's just you were echoey a moment ago, but now it's a little bit different.
And you can hear, just speak, Christine. I want to make sure the speaker's catching your voice well enough.
You guys can hear me clearly, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, something changed a moment ago because you had an echo, but now you don't. So thank you.
Just multiple computers in one room.
And that and technology, goodness. Jeremy, is there any formality about establishing a quorum of a committee, or do we feel like we have all the folks we need? I just want to make sure once we get started and know
Committee
that we're
meetings don't require a quorum,
okay.
but I'm happy to start with the roll call if you wish. That give people an extra couple of minutes.
That seems like a kindness. Yes, thank you.
Should I start now?
Let me think about it for, yes.
Okay, because it's 6:31. Sometimes we do give extra time, but I'm on a tight schedule myself, so I wouldn't mind starting as soon as possible.
And we can acknowledge people as they arrive or take a second roll call if that's helpful for the record.
Okay, I keep track of it throughout the meeting anyhow. So I'm going to mute everybody now. And committee members, I'm going to call your name. When I call your name, please unmute yourself, acknowledge your name, and then mute yourself again. If you are a board member but not a committee member, I am not going to call your name, but I will see you and write your name down. So let's start with Dan Murphy. I see Dan's just entering, so let's.
Yeah, sorry, here.
Thank you. David Estrada.
Here, thank you.
Thank you. Amel Afzal. Amel Afzal. Sandra Alfonso. Sandra Alfonso.
Present.
Thank you. Joan Body.
Here.
Thank you. Justin Collins. Justin Collins. Cynthia Gonzalez. Cynthia Gonzalez. Hector Gonzalez.
Here.
Thank you. Diana Gonzalez. Diana Gonzalez. Leonette Lopez. Leonette Lopez. Antoinette Martinez. Antoinette Martinez. Marilyn Melman. Marilyn Melman. Gabino Morales. Gabino Morales. Karen Rolnick.
Here.
Thank you. Damaris Santiago. Damaris Santiago. John Santori.
Present.
Thank you. I see she joined us. So Cynthia Gonzalez.
Present.
Thank you. Dan, David, roll has been called.
Okay. Thanks. Let's get right to it. So I'm Daniel Murphy, the chair or co-chair of the Economic Development Committee, and David Estrada is here as my co-chair. We are here tonight to listen to a presentation by Equinor. The meeting is based upon a previous presentation they gave to us in the run-up to the presentation to the Public Design Committee. Sorry, one second. I'm going to put my camera on. But I'm in a weird place with weird lighting, so it's almost like I'm telling a ghost story, which I kind of am. But so they're back. EDC and Equinor are back because they made some changes after the last meeting in our letter to the Public Design Commission, and they hope they like, or we like, what they show. But first, before Equinor comes on, I want to bring on Christine Pagliunga, our portfolio manager for Sunset Park, to speak to you. And then if I can give it to you, Chris, to give it to Equinor after that. Is that okay?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great, we're good. Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Pagliunga. I'm the Executive Director for EDC's Sunset Park portfolio. I also co-convene the Sunset Park Task Force with SBIDC, the South Brooklyn Industrial Development Corporation. The task force, as many of you may recall, was created in 2015 as a way to bring EDC to the table to be a better, more responsive neighbor and to ensure stakeholder involvement in the creation of the RFP that resulted in the sublease to SSBMT and the sublease to Equinor. So I want to thank the Sunset Park Task Force for their role in creating this RFP that has delivered this project to the Sunset Park waterfront. I think many of you will agree with me that this use and this tenant and this project is a really big win for Sunset Park. The project was meant to reactivate an underutilized asset and activate it with a use that would deliver good green industrial jobs and be a catalyst for further green manufacturing. I also think that this project delivers on a lot of the priorities that this community has voiced for a long time, including a commitment to the industrial work and waterfront, growing green manufacturing and job density, and promoting and continuing Sunset Park's history as a walk-to-work community. So while this project is a win, I think Equinor should be called on and are being called on to deliver the very best version of that project for you. And I know that they've heard your feedback. I know that they are here tonight to continue that conversation. They will share progress and acknowledge that there's more conversations to be had on this topic. I also want to thank this community board for the very meaningful conversation that we had the last time that Equinor presented on their design approach. And thank you for your feedback to the PDC. I think the really salient concerns in that feedback are really for Equinor to respond to tonight. So I'm going to cede the floor over to them this evening for their presentation, but I will be here tonight throughout to discuss any other topics or concerns that come up that you may have. So with that, I want to pass the mic over to Harrison and he can open up the Equinor presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Christine, and good evening, everybody. I'm Harrison Foyer. I'm the New York Director of Public Affairs for Equinor. I lead our engagement efforts across the state of New York. So, first, before we get into everything, I want to thank Community Board 7 and the committee for having us here tonight, for your time, as well as acknowledging you all for your leadership. And we'd be remiss also if we didn't acknowledge the community's role in supporting offshore wind and in welcoming us here and fighting for this industry to revitalize the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. And because of the leadership of so many, including groups like UPROSE, the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance, the South Brooklyn Industrial Development Corporation, and so many more, we have an opportunity to do more than just put power into the grid. We have an opportunity to listen to the community and progress our project in a way that we can all be proud. So these groups on the ground here have done so much to ensure a just transition, and their legacy and their work is something that we very much hope to build upon. So at the outset, this group is here tonight to pick up on that conversation where we left off in November on the design of the facility. And as we enter 2023, a year in which the Empire Wind Project and the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal are going to see considerable progress and milestones for the Sunset Park and Brooklyn community, we want to pick up on that progress. And we can best do so by listening to your constructive feedback and by meeting your expectations wherever possible. So tonight, we have a number of technical experts from our team who are going to talk a bit about the feedback we heard in November and how we're working to adjust our design. I would, however, like to point out that for how many are with us tonight, there are many, many more best in industry experts who are engaged on building this project to be a best in industry site. And if any point tonight there are questions that require more answers or a more in-depth conversation, I'd encourage you to follow up with us at empirewind@equinor.com. We're going to have that email address up for you at the end. We prioritize responsivity. We prioritize ensuring that your voice very much plays a role in the process, and we very much want to answer all of your questions. So we're going to discuss a number of topics tonight, including access to the waterfront, as well as what we're reviewing given state and federal requirements for safety and security at a power generating facility, power controlling facility, and an international shipping facility. We're going to discuss the building look and feel as well as the lighting, where our team has more to go into, incorporating some of the feedback that we've received since the meeting in November, and much more. The design of the facility is just one milestone, but it's a critical one, and it's even more critical that we get it right and we listen to you. So in furtherance of this discussion, we're hosting a community event open to all residents to register for on February 28th. We're going to have more information on that at the end, and there's going to be a formal announcement in the coming days. I'd also like to direct people to www.empirewind.com. At the end of the presentation, we're going to have all this information together, but again, that event is going to be on February 28th. So for our presentation today, we're going to have a more thorough and robust demonstration of our efforts and the current status. And I'd like to ask that all questions be asked at the end because we have a lot to go through. And again, we look forward to answering them. So bottom line, if we could leave you with two single things from tonight's presentation, we hope that they're this. We're committed to listening to you. To the extent that we can reflect your feedback, we're very much working to do so. And secondly, we have an industry-leading team of technical experts committed to implementing your feedback and building a project that the community will be proud of. This won't be the only opportunity for this dialogue. We're going to be creating many more opportunities. And we have a fundamental respect for the fact that we're not just working to build a project in the community, but we can most effectively do so with the community. So with that, I'd like to now turn it over to Harriet Green from our operations team.
Hi, hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you very much, Harrison, for the introduction. My name is Harriet Green. I'm the operations manager for our Empire and Beacon projects. And I'm going to take you through just the starting agenda and a couple of points around introducing Equinor. I know some of you may have seen some of these slides before in other forums, but I thought it's worth a recap for those that haven't met us and aren't aware of really how we're driving the development of these projects. So as you can see here, quick introduction, we'll go through an overview of the project. We'll go into a little bit more detail as Harrison has alluded to on some of those topics that we know are important, and then we'll go on to the longer term look ahead. So starting with the projects themselves. So here we have a map that shows the Empire Wind lease areas and Beacon Wind. So we are very fortunate, Empire Wind 1, Empire Wind 2, and Beacon Wind 1 were all selected by New York State to supply clean energy and local offshore wind energy, more to the point, right into the city of New York. So altogether, these projects will power around 2 million homes. But more than just bringing power, they will bring other investments with them. So as part of our commitment to the region, we are also looking to invest in workforce and economic development, as well as developing the local facilities and supporting regional environmental monitoring and research. So this is just some of the areas where we are looking to really bring value to the region and to the local community. Calvin, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. So just to give a little overview of the scope of the work that we're trying to do, we will come back to the actual port development itself. We've got a little bit more on that later. But just as a general overview, what Equinor are building is everything from the wind turbines offshore, all of the cables and the electrical facilities that bring that power onto land and deliver it into the grid to get that power to the homes where it's needed, but also the operation and maintenance facilities and vessels and all of those good things that we need to actually facilitate the building and running of these projects. So it's at that interconnection point with the grid operator is where our responsibility ends. So we definitely have a lot of interfaces along the way here. So fundamentally, offshore wind is great because the wind blows more strongly and consistently offshore, but also it blows when we need it. So during peak energy times, in the mornings when everyone's getting up, in the evenings where you're getting home, cooking dinner, turning on your lights. So this is great for areas that do have these large population centers that aren't necessarily as easy to bring power to from larger onshore plants. Next slide, please, Calvin. So a little bit more specifically about what is going to be feeding specifically into this area, so South Brooklyn. So the overall lease itself is going to be around 147 turbines with 2 separate offshore substations. But one of those, the cable from offshore to land, comes in at South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. So we are bringing power right into South Brooklyn. So just some other typical statistics. The upper blade tip here is a height of 951 feet, which is pretty big. Each turbine produces 15 megawatts of power with a single blade rotation able to power a typical New York home for 1.5 days. So just to give you a little bit of context around the scale of this project. Next slide, please, Calvin. So then I know what is very important is understanding how we're going to do that while including the local communities and really keeping a strong focus on those commitments that we're making. And the way that Equinor does this is very much based around engagement and collaboration across all of our different stakeholders. So we absolutely have a respect for the environment. That's one of our top values as a company globally. But then when it comes to our local presence, we absolutely want to be active in the way that we engage. So as Harrison said, we're here to listen, we're here to learn. Yes, we want to create jobs, we want to invest, but we want to understand what's actually important to these communities that we're coming into. So those investments really do have the biggest impact. So wherever possible, we do want to be sourcing in New York and the US. We want to be local. And we really want to understand all of the different importance areas, particularly when it comes to fisheries, environmental justice, and as we see here, frontline and tribal communities. And most of all, you know, we want this to be a dialogue. We want this to be an open engagement. So we want to be transparent about our activities. But we also would really appreciate and do appreciate the openness we receive back from the community in sharing your views and letting us know exactly what it is that's important to you. So with that, a little bit more on the engagement itself. So there have been a few developments recently that we've been very proud to be able to announce. So the Offshore Wind Learning Center, again, we will come back to on the next slide. But the Offshore Wind Ecosystem Fund, I know there's a member of the different groups represented here today that have served on the strategy committee, on the selection committee. So we're really pleased to be collaborating on being able to bring those funds to the local community. And it's the same then with the Innovation Hub that was announced a couple of weeks ago. We do also have a commitment to working with minority and women-owned businesses. We have a specific commitment for 30% within our procurement goals, but obviously that's just an indication of where we want to start. We are also supporting NYC EDC's Offshore Wind Waterfront Pathways Training and Capacity Building Program. So lots of things that we're involved in, and we're trying to get more involved in the local community. On to the next, please, Kevin. So then coming back to the Learning Centre, we do hope to have a little bit more information on this very soon in terms of more of the specific plans around the Learning Centre. But the general plan for this is it's meant to target outreach to the community, mainly around education, with a focus on K-12 students from local public schools, and any participants in offshore wind educational programming. And of course, on top of that, we hope it can be open for generally people that are interested in entering the industry, whether that is really at that grassroots end of it, or whether it's people looking to transition or just take more of an interest in understanding what it's all about. So typical things you'll be able to expect from the Learning Center is informational videos about the industry, about offshore wind as a technology, and what it is that we do here and why offshore wind. We hope to be able to also have some interactive exhibits on the port activities, and hopefully this again just brings more awareness of offshore wind as an industry, which will hopefully help guide more people towards careers in offshore wind. And with that, I will now hand over to Harrison to tell you more about the specific work. Not Harrison, sorry, to Calvin, talking about the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal itself.
Thanks, Harriet. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. So wanted to talk a bit high level again. I know some of this was presented last time of the staging port, give a few more kind of renderings on how we think it'll look, and then I'll go through operations and maintenance space. I know last time we presented that we'll have, so this is the current SBMT site, right, which is bounded between kind of 39th and 29th Streets, just west of 2nd Avenue. And so over on 29th, we'll have our onshore substation, which is where that power comes in that Harriet was speaking about in that map earlier. Just south of that, we'll have our operations and maintenance base, which is really the main part of what we want to talk about and give some updates on tonight. And then further to that is, the big piece, the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. And so that's where we're going to be doing for the near term. You'll see a lot of the activity at. You see in the corner there, just to give a sense of scale of the things we're talking about, right? 951 feet up in the air, easy to think about, but it's not until you see that. That's the head or the nacelle at the top of the wind turbine there. You can see in the corner a person standing next to it. So those are the kind of components that we're hoping to bring into the site here, move around and kind of get them set up before we ship them back offshore. So quite a bit of work to do at the staging port to bring it up from what you see in that top left corner to what we hope it looks like over on the right there as we go in the future. So to help with a different view, right, I did want to show this came up last time, what's the site look like, or where are we in Sunset Park? I mean, everyone who lives here knows where SBMT is and District City and the like, but just when you're at Sunset Park, right, what do you see? And I've kind of tried to highlight with that pink outline there, that's where the current Sims wind turbine stands. It's even just a little bit shorter than the way I've drawn it there. And if you draw that line across, that's all kind of above and higher than the existing light poles that are on site today. So we'll talk a bit about the changes we've actually made to the lighting as we go through. But I did just want to highlight kind of even at night, right? In this picture, the lights are on at SBMT today. And again, to show where we are and where it is in the views of the community. I'm happy to talk through it if there's questions on it, but just to frame it a bit more on where it is versus the kind of normal Google Maps view that we oftentimes use when we're describing the area. So if I come back to the site a bit more and focus on really the piece that we talked about in November, and that we'll come back again later on this quarter to talk about, which is the operations and maintenance space. And we dove pretty heavily into the specific designs of it, but did want to just highlight what it is that we're doing at the space, right? We have the capability for the warehousing for all of the projects that Harriet was describing before, as well as the office space, right? We'll have about 70 personnel and then a control room there that we'll use to control all of our offshore wind farms, as well as our onshore substation. So quite a bit of work there to manage the power grid. As well as that, with the warehouse, we'll have the facilities for the folks going offshore, folks going on rotation and doing the maintenance on the equipment. You can kind of see in the corner, there's going to be an SOV dock there where the vessel will come in, and we'll be providing shore power to that so that when it's at dock, it can be plugged in and be a hybrid. And I think Harriet will talk a bit more about how that vessel actually works and that rotational work that people have the opportunity to do. We're working on the project. Close to the building, you can see in the renderings, and we spoke about it a bit before, we're going to have the green roof on top, and then we're hoping to have solar panels and actually partner with the local communities for a community-led solar solution. So quite a bit of things that we're trying to do above and beyond just a certification and to make the building sustainable and really partner with the community, as Harriet and Harrison spoke about. I'm going to talk through some of the changes, and hopefully you see it even in that rendering that we've made. Some we've already completed, some we still have some work to do on. For example, one of them I know is a big piece, came up in the conversation, came up in the letter, came up again with PDC, which is the access to the site and being able to walk through that. We're still working on it. We're happy to talk through some of the challenges in the areas that we're looking at, but we've spent a lot of time over the last few weeks, and I'd really hoped to be able to come today with the solution for the request for access to the waterfront. Be honest, I don't have it yet, but when we do come back later on in March, we're going to have something, or at least a full answer as to what we're trying to do to accommodate that. But at the moment, it's not something that I can show a drawing and talk to today. But can show you some of the other changes we've made. I heard quite a bit in previous discussions around the window placement and the varying heights of it. So we've worked with the architect a bit and kind of streamlined those across, bring them all down to just one level so that it looks a little bit cleaner across the site. We've also moved away from that Cortan steel color to kind of an Equinor blue. So this is our more of our typical branding colors with this blue. But I think it ties a bit better into the surrounding area, closer to Sims and some of the other colors that you see. So it does look, we are actually quite happy with the change we've made with it, and hope to hear some good feedback. Again, this is kind of preliminary. We're hoping to get this finalized, but we do plan to then come back when we need to. You'll see off to the left as well in the rendering, kind of a grayscaled mural, or that's to depict a grayscaled mural. So we are hoping as well to incorporate a mural and work with the community on what that design looks like on the edge of the building there. So that's part of that community engagement at the end of February that Harrison and Harriet kind of teased out, is to talk through that, what that looks like and how we can work to get that incorporated into the building there. One thing that we'll talk about next is the fence. So you'll see in this rendering on the right, we don't have a fence there. That's another one that we're still work in progress. We're looking at the different requirements. I talked about the control room that we have, the offshore rotational work that we need to do. So we have some federal and state guidelines on what we need to do to kind of keep the site secured. Some Transportation Act kind of guidelines. So we have a few options. I put this up there to say these are the ones that we've shown that meet the code regulations that we have to comply with. We haven't selected them yet. Happy to hear any opinions on them. It's plenty of different options out there and different ideas on it. But again, just to show there is a work in progress. We are still going through the selection. There's quite a few checks we need to do to get to these final choices. But we did hear the feedback last time that the previous fence, which I think was more on the one that's kind of top center of this, wasn't really preferred. The one on the right side kind of lines up a bit more with the one over by Brooklyn Bridge Park and the Port Authority site. So we're trying to see if we can make that work with the guidelines that we do have to comply with, talking with the Coast Guard and NYPD around that. Some areas where we have been able to change, and I spoke kind of given that view of SBMT from Sunset Park at night, is with the light pole arrangements. So I know previously we'd said we'd have 200-foot tall lights on site, a lot of concerns. I spoke about how they are lower than even that Sims turbine that I showed before, but still light pollution is real, right? It's an issue and a concern. So we have reduced it. They're not as obvious here, but we're now showing 3 lights across the site, but we've brought them down from 100 feet down to 40 feet. Now, we do still need to illuminate the area. It is a 24/7 operation, specifically within the control room. And it just in general, right, we need some lighting around the area, but we've brought them down and hopefully much more in line with the request there. We are using the latest state of the art for the LEDs and the anti-glare light to reduce that light pollution. It's going to be very pointed to the areas we need it to be. But in general, my hope is that just bringing them down so it's below the horizon, below the other buildings, really gets closer to the feedback that we talked about before and heard before from the community. So now another one was the traffic and some questions around that. So I'm actually going to let Brian take over and run through a bit of that piece if he's on. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Calvin. So the traffic came up as a concern for the site. And what we wanted to emphasize is that when we submitted our permits and did our analysis for the port, we followed a city and state traffic screening assessment that was completed. And the conclusions based on the modeling of the construction, the staging, and the operations and maintenance that have been discussed so far is that the traffic would have no significant adverse impact on the transportation of the site. Also, that the projected vehicle trips were below their threshold in the screening assessment document. We're planning on building bike racks and having access for the workers to arrive by foot to minimize commute and traffic, and to assist with the site. Next slide, Calvin. Pass it to Harriet.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I'll take over from this one. So just to give everyone a bit more of an idea of the way we're going to be using these facilities that Calvin's just talked you through. So really what we're looking at for operation and maintenance is this will be our hub. So this will cover a lot of the activities for both Empire Wind and Beacon Wind. And there are onshore and there are offshore elements to this. So the onshore facilities will cover an electrical substation where we will be performing the operation and maintenance of that substation. But it's also where we are going to mobilize all of our offshore workers onto the vessel, similar to the one that you see in this picture down here. We are also going to be using this site for storage and management of our parts, tools, and equipment, which is where we will have use of the warehouse. That's why we do need that warehouse section of this building as well. As Calvin alluded to, we will have a wind farm control center, which again is represented by the picture on the left. This isn't exactly what ours will look like. This is an example from another Equinor project. And this wind farm control center is actually the only routinely 24/7 operation that will happen when it comes to the operation and maintenance. Everything else is really more of the back office support, so management of health, safety, and environment, all of the maintenance, logistics, planning, and coordinating, other technical support services, and pretty much every other business related or administrative service that comes with running a business. So we will have your typical office hours for the most part for a lot of these. But when it comes to mobilizing for offshore, the large vessel, what we call a service operation vessel or an SOV, this is planned to come in once every 2 weeks. So that's when we will do our shift change for our offshore workers. So that includes a whole host of roles, which I'll talk through a little bit more on the next slide. And when this vessel comes in, it will be a little bit governed by the weather and by the tides. So this may happen at night, but our main plan will be to get this done during the day. It's safer for everyone involved when you're performing these operations during daylight. So there should be very little work there that we will be performing at night. And this vessel, when it does come in, it will come in on battery power. So we will have a hybrid SOV, meaning that when it's actually out in the field, battery technology just isn't there yet for a full 2-week shift on batteries. But we will have a hybrid SOV. So when it is coming into port, when it is within New York state waters, it will be on battery power. So hopefully that is really making an improvement towards the emissions in this area. And when it's in port, it will be running offshore power. So again, we won't be running those diesel engines while it is in port. So that's the way that we are hoping to manage our operations. We go to the next slide, please. And as I said, a little bit more on the actual typical jobs. So offshore, we are expecting more of the hands-on type roles. So maintenance technicians, we also have planning teams on the vessels, along with the marine crew. We will also have field medics, which is something we feel very strongly about as an industry. actually these are very remote assets. You can't just call in an ambulance or any other of the emergency services if you have a problem. We will be fairly self-sufficient, but also then able to support other emergencies that happen in the vicinity. When it comes to the onshore jobs, as I mentioned, we'll have engineering roles. We will also have onshore technical roles. We've mentioned that onshore substation that's going to be right next to our O&M base. We'll have all of the bulk of our planning and coordinating, warehouse and logistics, health and safety being an absolute priority for us. So we will have health and safety advisors on site, the control room operators, and then any other general facilities, operations and maintenance and management. So again, typical roles that you can expect from most onshore office sites. Bearing in mind, we do have some stricter security requirements because of the nature of the activities that we do. And then there are also off-site jobs. So these are roles that may not be based at this office at all, but we still need to run a project. So finance and control, power trading, IT, all of our procurement and other technical specialists. So there's going to be a lot going on around this project based in a number of locations. So we're really hoping that there's lots of opportunities here that we can bring to the local community. I believe with that, I'll hand it back to Calvin.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. Appreciate that overview. So again, bringing it a bit more back to site, right? And where are we and when are we hoping to actually see the changes take place, right? We've spoken for quite a bit, especially for those of you who've been paying attention around all these changes and transformations. But of course, when are you going to start to see, changes at SB&T, and when are these jobs going to appear? So just a really high level schedule of where we are today, right? We've been doing a number of surveys on site to check the cleanliness of the soil, to check the existing conditions. The original port was built back in the 50s or before. So really want to understand that to make sure when we do go to do those upgrades, we're quite thorough in doing that safely and efficiently. So we're going through those surveys and doing our detailed design today. And then we've just begun to kick off our construction planning. So hopefully if you have heard, we've announced our partner in the construction scope, company Skanska. So we're beginning to work with them and actually detailing out all of those construction activities. And that'll take us through the rest of this year. With hopes then that as early as next year, we'll be able to break ground on the site and start doing the upgrades to the existing bulkheads, the existing piers, and getting to work on building that operations and maintenance base. And that'll take anywhere from 1.5 years to 2 years. And then after that, we'll be in full operation mode, bringing in those wind turbine components that we showed you, setting them up and staging them for Empire Wind, and starting to populate that operations and maintenance base. So quite a bit of work still in the planning to do through this year, and quite a bit of construction and work we have to do to get the port ready to operate so that Harriet and team can come over and use it from there. So again, just kind of a big picture. Harrison's going to run through a bit on how we're going to get ourselves from where we are today to that start of construction and talk a bit more about that event he was teasing before. So Harrison, on to you to close us out.
Perfect. Thank you, Calvin. So as I said before, we very much heard your feedback from the last meeting. We very much want to hear your feedback and all of our engagements ongoing. This will not be the only opportunity to have that dialogue. So in the immediate future, we're going to be creating many more opportunities to engage with us. First, on February 28th, we have the date there. That email address, if you're interested in coming to it and finding out more, please send an email to us. Let us know. We're going to have an announcement. We're going to share it with Community Board 7. We want to share it with the broader community. It's an opportunity to get experts from our team together with the community. If there's questions, if there's input, if there's feedback, we want to hear it. We want to be able to reflect in the project. And to address the question that came up in the chat, at that event, we'll have language interpreters in Chinese and Spanish, as well as ASL, and all of our outreach, we're going to include language translations as well. So again, if you're interested in attending, you can email us at that email address. We're going to make sure you receive the official announcement. We're going to be presenting to Community Board 7 in late March and presenting to the PDC in late April. Once again, if you have any questions at all that we didn't cover in the presentation tonight, or maybe occur to you after we conclude tonight, please feel free to reach out to us at that email. It's on your screen. Our website is www.empirewind.com. We're happy to take your questions. We're happy to continue keeping the discussion going. So with that, We very much appreciate your time and for the community's interest in joining us tonight. And why don't we go ahead and open up for questions? And with the permission of the committee, we want to start with one that's in the chat.
Yeah, if it's in the chat and it's from a committee member, Harrison, please go ahead.
Sure. So I saw that Catherine Walsh asked a question. I can read it back for the group. That's the appropriate protocol. Catherine Walsh asked.
That's fine.
Okay, Catherine Walsh asked, I know that Equinor earned an F to the CDP response for water linked to climate action. How does the company measure up on action on climate, water, and environmental justice issues? Benchmark to their peers matters, and especially given the location in our district, an environmental justice harmed community. When it gets to questions, would like to understand how the community is taking action on water, climate, and how that will be reflected at this specific site. So I'd like to go to Brian and Sam from our team. We're going to answer those to the best we can. If there's more information at the end of it, we're happy to follow up. So Brian on the more technical side, Sam on the more community side. Brian, why don't we go to you now?
All right. So I'll try to address that question in several parts. So we're, from an environmental standpoint, just a few things that we're doing at the port. The first one is Equinor is taking the site through the New York State Brownfields program. So we are going to be remediating legacy contamination that exists at the site, removing asbestos, PCBs, and tanks that were left behind. We're also, as part of the port improvements, will be removing sediments in and around the port that have accumulated over time that do contain contamination. And when we're done, we're going to have sediments that are going to be exposed to the surface that are in better condition than when we started, and they're going to be cleaner for the water. Regarding climate action, we did a full assessment on air, water, and other quality that we did for the port. And we're taking and proposing several steps to minimize direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions, including, as Harriet mentioned and Calvin mentioned, shore to power. The hybrid vessel, first in its kind, will not have emissions while at port. The O&M base will be fully electric with no emissions from the power to the building. Stringent electric efficiency standards per the New York City Local Law 97. And we're looking to evaluate non-fossil fuel fired equipment where available, and including biofuels. So that, along with some of the other aspects we're doing, will hopefully minimize and reduce emissions on the environmental justice community. With that, Sam?
Yeah, I would, oh, okay, I'm unmuted. I really like this question because this is an issue and a victory actually on environmental justice that we've been discussing for a while now. We have partnered with Uprose, which is a prominent organization in Sunset Park. And we know that they have been fighting for years to prevent some sort of gentrifying development to happen on this site, but have been instead fighting for a just transition, has been mentioned before, and also to promote renewable energy as a salve for the issues surrounding environmental justice problems. So what we see here is a great victory for all those who've advocated for having a just transition and for fighting against climate injustice and environmental injustice, and bringing renewable energy into the area, into the neighborhood, is something that I think that a lot of people here have been fighting for a long time. And with all the different details that you've seen for this this particular project and the vessel and all these other elements to it, I think that this is actually, and according to Uprose as well as our partners there, this is one of the best solutions to the climate justice problem that's been going on for many, many years. And we're going to actually speak in deeper detail on that subject when we have our community meeting at the end of the month. So I really appreciate the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Karen, you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. Looking ahead, what is the lifespan of the components, especially the blades of the windmills, and what happens to them when they're spent? Will you be storing the spent ones on site, or what will be happening with that?
Yeah, I can take this one. So there's a lot of work going in at the minute to the materials when it comes to blade development and manufacturing to make them more degradable at the end of life, but obviously they go through a lot of wear and tear. These are typically 30 to 35-year projects, so they have to last. They are fairly durable. We will have a more detailed decommissioning plan available that we will be updating through the life, and as technology changes, we will expect it to change a lot in the next 30 years, but we will actually be looking at ways to responsibly dispose of these, and will not be leaving them on site. That is not within our decommissioning plans at all. We will be removing all of the blades from site.
And the other question I have is really, every time I see a picture of a parking lots going into our neighborhood, my antenna goes up, because study after study after study has shown that when you add parking, you increase traffic congestion. And so I don't know, I don't know whether I would recommend not having a ton of parking, and I hope that you very aggressively encourage your employees not to drive. We have an extensive subway and bus network that should not make that necessary. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
I can maybe comment on that last bit as well. So yes, for the longer term life, we absolutely are encouraging other ways to travel. So we will have safe access into the site, allowing people to travel in by foot using mass transit. We also will have bike racks for push bicycles as well. So again, encouraging people to cycle in and to use other methods other than driving.
John Santuri.
Thanks. I had a few questions to follow up on some of the things we've been hearing. Can we run through quickly the employment numbers at the site in different capacities? I know you said 70 people. I believe that's at the O&M site, but can you talk about how many people will be working on the site at different phases of this project? And can you also connect that to the number of parking spaces you're planning at the site? That's my first question.
Who wants to take that?
I think I'll for the operations and maintenance employees and parking, I'll pass that maybe to Harriet. For construction, a lot of the construction that is going to occur from bulkhead improvement and dredging, the number of employees will vary depending on the scope of the work. They will be mobilizing from the water versus from the site. For the other aspects of demolition, again, it'll depend on the scope, but the employees and the contractors could be from tens to more than that per day. But again, depending on that. From an operation, Harriet, once the port is built and we're into staging, and then the O&M base, I don't know if Harriet, you have that. I believe it's 70 people long-term.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It is. It's around 70 people. Some of those will be offshore roles as well. So some are going to be people that are more passing through the site to get onto vessels and to mobilize offshore. So absolutely in those cases, we're expecting that we will find other ways to ensure we can get our workers to this site. We appreciate, particularly wanting to have a local workforce. A lot of where people are coming from, they may not have cars anyway, if they're coming from these congested areas that don't have necessarily parking at home. So we are trying to encourage and make possible as many other routes in than just driving.
And how many total parking spaces does the current design call for?
There's 70 spots at the O&M base, John.
70 spots currently. Maybe this is the wrong forum to ask this, but over the years, I've seen different job estimates associated with phases of this project. Years ago, the governor put out a number of 1,200. I've seen numbers in the hundreds at different times. Maybe I've missed it. I probably have, but I've never been quite clear on what those numbers were referring to. All of those numbers were a lot bigger than 70. I thought they were referring to maybe total construction employees. But can anybody address any of those numbers that have been put out previously?
Yeah, so those larger numbers would have included construction as well. So typically what you'll see is a much higher number of jobs, but for a much shorter time for the construction. And then during operation and maintenance, you'll see a lot fewer jobs, but over a much longer period. So you're talking, with the construction, roughly 3, 4, 5 years worth of jobs. But then for the O&M, you're then talking 30 to 35 years worth of jobs. So it's a slightly different profile. But I think the numbers you would have seen referencing, 1,200, that would have included the construction as well.
Okay, let me just quickly move on to a couple of other things. Can we clarify the lighting and the height from the park? So is what you're saying that the lights will not be visible at all from the park, and they won't be visible from the community? This was something that John Fontillis and other people raised a bunch of concerns about at the last meeting, that essentially, as I understood it, from different parts of the neighborhood, in addition from the park, you would see the previously proposed lighting and there would be a lot of light pollution. So can you speak to that?
Yeah,
you said 40-foot lights, is that right, Calvin? Is
yeah,
the current
that's right,
proposal?
John. So there are at the site today, if you've been, and it's hard to see it because the site's not used as much. There are people using the site today. So there's, I think I want to call it 2,500-foot tall light poles at the site right now that are currently on in some capacity. So when I took that photo was taken pretty recently. There were some of the lights on. I was just trying to show you there that the existing lights that are at 100 feet are pretty low on that horizon shot. And I can go all the way back to that if you want to see that one again, and we can talk through it. And so some of those might be moved around on the site, but that's just to relocate them so that we can get those components to where we need to be. Within the O&M base, previously we'd planned to relocate some of those 100-foot poles right here to the site. And a fair challenge from the team that, on site, we're going to have these big components, you might need the higher lights. But here at the O&M base, it's a little bit different, right? So what can we do? We went back, and these ones, rather than just reusing the existing poles, we're going to shorten down to just be at 40 feet. So again, the Sims turbine, which you can see just barely from Sunset Park, at least I thought just barely, sits at about 135 feet to that nacelle. So that line that I've drawn in there is at pretty much at that turbine at that nacelle at 135 feet. So the existing lights are all below that horizon line, and then our new lights will be even lower than that. So only the ones that we're adding. Net, there should be less total lights on site than there are today, and there'll be newer lights that'll be more anti-glare and more directional.
Well, it's better than being dark all night and all day long. So I think the general, I'm sorry, John, just I'm gonna let you go, John, but
yeah,
Calvin, just I guess the question would be for a question like that, because I saw another comment in the thread from Julio, and we both live near the bus depot, and it's an important institution, but it's also it could be a nuisance with lights and stuff like that. So the question we would probably present is how high do those lights have to be at the different parts of the facility? And let's look at the minimum would be nice. Keeping in mind, we like the streets lit. We like, that's a green. There's going to be a greenway. No, it's serious. There's going to be a greenway along that route, especially around where your offices will be.
Yeah, no, they've just started work on that greenway on 39th. They're making some good progress, and I know the other one's got some longer term plans there. So we are looking quite a bit on the site. Like I said, those components, you saw them in that image. They're about 45, 50 feet tall for those nacelles. They're not lit up, but we need to be able to safely work around them, and that's really the main piece for the lighting within the site. So we're looking quite a bit. We are reducing the number. Shrinking those down is a challenge, to be honest, right? That's why within the O&M base where we can bring them down, we don't have those components. We're working hard. We have taken them down to a lower height in our design. But at the other part of the staging port, trust me, it's a lot easier for us, for maintenance, for everything, to reduce them, right? If the lower they are, the easier they are to work with. It is something that we have a lot of benefit to shrinking them down if we can. It's just not always feasible with the other parts of it, but we are taking a serious look. We spent a couple hours today even with our contractors looking at those light heights. So
this is Dave, co-chair. I just wanted to chime in on that point. Like, reducing height and being thoughtful about placement is very important, especially in the different zones of the site. I am sensitive to other contexts where we've worked with the shielding on lights to focus light where it's needed and reduce overall light pollution. I mean, that's good for neighbors, including neighbors who happen to be birds. So that I mean, even the temperature, the color tone temperature of the fixtures that are used can be a major factor. And so sometimes we see a new industrial facility or a new commercial facility, it comes in, the lighting, on paper, on spec, isn't terribly bad, but the actual fixture and the bulbs used and the light, is the visual impairment. So I think, that's a pretty well-developed area of design, and I'm sure you guys have your folks who know about that. But if the next time you come back, you could speak to not only the height and placement, but other modest, low-cost methods of mitigating unintended light cast away from the safety work zones that you need, that would be really helpful, because it would help us understand that, we've done all we can, and then we can turn around to our community and hold the whole process up as having been responsive and responsible. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David and John and Daniel. All good comments. So I hear the thoughts and concerns. Don't want to try and design it here in the meeting. I'll take those back, and whether we do it in the workshop at the end of the month or when we come back in March, I'll make sure we at least talk through some of those points and give some, or have it available, right? If we don't want to take up too much time in the next presentation, we'll talk the solution, but we're happy to make sure that we've got some of those details handy when we get back
Thanks,
to it.
John, follow-ups?
Yeah, thank you for this. So I think, so I wanted to ask about the fencing, if we could just speak to the fencing again. And then I had one more quick general one. Just with the fencing, the issue is you need to have a fence for security reasons. Is that correct? So the question is what kind of fencing you're going to choose?
Yeah, that's right, John. And I saw another question. I know I mentioned the NYPD before. We're just looking with the different agencies to understand it. We've all come from different backgrounds across the project, so we're talking through. But the SOV vessel, when it's moored up here, is governed by an MTSA, or a Transportation Security Act, and then the control room within the building is under an NERC, which is an energy reliability law, right? Because we're controlling the infrastructure, the power grid. And so there are just barriers that are required for some of those. So we need to have some fence around the site, or some security around the site, right? Which is different levels and pieces. So we're looking at what those different regulations say, what they expect you to have, and trying to find which fence we're going to have. We do need to have something around the perimeter of the campus, though. Just because of it is a functioning port site and the control room, right, for the infrastructure, and we have the heavy components that I've talked about as well, right? So we want to make sure that there's some barriers to prevent, inadvertently someone walking through while we're trying to move the nacelles or even the forklifts there around the site. So we're looking at all of that. We are trying to make it something that you can still see the building, still see the murals, see the aesthetics that we've worked to improve, you know, but also make sure we comply with those codes and standards that we need to.
Last brief question. Can we just confirm for the record what happened at the PDC meeting in December and what is the process going forward? Is the community supposed to write is there going to be a new design, a new letter, a new PDC hearing? Can we speak to that?
Yeah, I can summarize and we tried to briefly put it up there, but I know we just rushed through it. So we did present to the PDC in December as a follow-on. They had seen your letter. Appreciate sending those comments. They, I'd say, echoed similar feedback and kind of formally gave us that back. You know, we're not there yet to give a formal response to everything, right? You've seen there's still work in progress in this presentation. So this was really to come back and say we are still working on it. Didn't want to go radio silent till we came back with our next formal request for a letter. So we're here today to just discuss, kind of create some of this dialogue, let you know about this workshop we're going to have in the end of February. And then we hope to come back, if allowed, at the end of March to then formally ask for an updated letter. And then we hope to go back to the PDC for that formal resubmit. They did ask us to resubmit, showing that we continue to engage with everyone. So this is just you know, you yielded some time to us and we appreciate that, to kind of give an update on where we were in the process. We will need to come back, and we want to come back with an answer to even some of these things that have said, look, this is still a work in progress. So that's the kind of look forward plan. So there is some time to keep having these discussions as well. This isn't a formal request like it was back in November for any sort of letter or anything.
Well, I'm sure Jeremy's happy to hear that. We don't have to write a letter. Speaking of that, Jeremy, do we have any questions from anyone at the meeting, other committee members, board members, or guests?
So members of the public, attendees, if you would like to ask a question or make a statement, please raise your hand. I'll give you a few moments.
But and while we're waiting for that, I just wanted to point out one thing I saw in the presentation. The education center. I don't know where you got those. Were those images you got from another Equinor facility, or just some stock images of an environmental education center? It's okay if they were the latter.
So the answer on the learning center is that it's still in the works. Those are not. It's not built out yet, and Equinor is still in the process of finding a space. There's a number of parameters that are required for where the learning center is going to be. The program that's going to be part of the community outreach for Learning Center. They are, I mean, we've had a whole series of renderings and potential ways that the Learning Center is going to be built out, but at this time, it's still in the process of being developed by Equinor and EDC.
And it will exist within that within those renderings that you've already shown. It's going to exist somewhere within the facilities as planned, and you're looking for space within that.
Not necessarily in the O&M building that you've all been seeing the images and renderings of, but it's going to be very close to that in the neighborhood. In the neighborhood and not there. Well, we would recommend, I'll tell you right now, it'd be really nice to have it there. Absolutely. I mean, it's not like you don't have enough. I mean, I know it's a big space, the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. It's nice to, I mean, it just gives you it reminded me of the Sims facility, those images. You probably researched that. Remember that is actually there. And the Sims facility is not an easy place to get to. Yours, by comparison, would be much easier, especially with its proximity to Industry City. It's along the grid. It's right there. If the facility for education, both for children and adults, as the slide said, anyone interested in the industry, and that should be everybody,
it should be within that facility, not some satellite somewhere where the rent is cheap.
We completely agree. And while everyone's still working on that issue and also the issue of public access to the waterfront, I think that we're actually going to have more information on that at our community meeting on the 28th of this month. But that's, you know, that's the same goal that we share, and we're really working hard to get to that same point.
Okay, great.
Dan, I have
Chairman?
a couple of people who wish to speak. I have Mary Luponen first. Mary, you could unmute yourself. Mary, I see you're unmuted, but I cannot hear you.
I think she said she doesn't have a mic. She's
Oh,
saying she does
oh,
not have a microphone.
Okay, so then please type your question. I'll be happy to ask it. Eduardo Jimenez, you can unmute yourself. Oops, sorry. Eduardo, I accidentally muted you trying to, thank you.
You're trying to silence me, Jeremy. All right.
Never silence.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. I have a question regarding, I guess, community engagement, and then also welcoming all members of the community to participate. How is this project currently sort of like welcoming people to people from the community to engage with this project? And so is it, what kind of outreach is it doing? Like, is it relying on sort of like nonprofits to sort of like disseminate the information and then welcome them to like particular workshops or panels? Or is Equinor doing this on their own? And is there any, I guess, is there any, any information in particular to that subject matter?
So in terms of outreach to the community, we have, as you saw in the presentation, we have a number of different programs. We have the Ecosystem Fund, which is a grant for workforce development in the offshore wind industry, especially geared to New York City organizations, companies, academic institutions that could fit that bill. We've also recently opened the Innovation Hub in a partnership with NYU, also in the space there in Industry City, for startups, for entrepreneurs who are engaged in solutions for issues in offshore wind. And we also have the Learning Center, which was just the previous question, where we haven't yet identified the space where it's going to be, but it's going to be either in the facility or very, very close by as part of the agreement with the NYC EDC of where it should be in the programming and all of the sort of outreach for K through 12 and beyond is still up for input. And that's what we're here to do, is to get the community's input on what you think would be most productive, most beneficial to all those who are going to be coming in to learn about offshore wind, to learn about what Equinor is doing there in the community. So there's a whole host of different programs and outreach efforts that Equinor is doing right now.
And Eduardo, thanks for the question. I'd build upon that just to say, we have that event coming up on the 28th. That's just the most immediate one coming up. We're going to put together more. And also we held a couple of those last year, but, again, want to point out, we're very early in the project, and a lot of that engagement is going to continue to be built as the team's built out and as we move forward. But thank you again for the question.
Yeah, when we meet on the 28th, it's not just to present as we are here, like we will present, but it's really to get questions like that and get feedback like that on what might be the most important elements to the Learning Center or to the Innovation Hub, or who would be a great candidate to apply to the Ecosystem Fund. All those sorts of issues, all the sorts of questions and ways to offer feedback are really what we're looking for when we have our community meeting on February 28th.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I guess that this project is aware that this is a multicultural community with multilingual, and I think that it's important that the community is communicated at large, and then that is not just limited to the community board and just the community board participants right now that you currently have in this call. And so then, is there any way that one can potentially connect with Equinor in order to sort of like create a good question and answer, I guess, information Q&A, right? So that maybe as a independent third party can better sort of like inform people in my community?
Well, Eduardo, I mean, not only that, there's the website and the email address that Harrison identified at the top of this meeting, but I would love to get, I mean, if I would see that email from you and I would respond back and say, those are great thoughts about what to do, but I would also ask you for a list of all the people who we might be missing in the community, because we have a long list of many organizations and many people in the community, but who are we potentially missing who could come to a session like we're going to have a community meeting on the 28th and others after that could give productive feedback, could give us their thoughts. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do here, is build up the connections and ways that people are communicating with each other. So the info at Equinor is number one, but also I would follow up with you on just that. Who might we be missing in terms of outreach and everyone, individuals and organizations in the community?
And that's February 28th, right, Sam?
That's correct.
Okay, and is it online Zoom that we'll be, or it will just be an info session? What will it look like?
It's actually going to be an in-person meeting.
Oh, great.
It's going to be a after work starting at 6 o'clock meeting with everyone who you see here and probably others to boot, and information, refreshments, all where we're able to get together in person and really talk about it.
Okay. Well, you know where to send the information.
Absolutely.
For our purposes. Jeremy, we have a question from Marie. If you'd like to read, and then if we have anyone else.
Happy to take care of that. I see Mary, I believe it's Mary. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. One of your questions has been answered below in writing. So that's the first question. So will the existing city bike docks along 2nd Avenue be maintained during and after construction?
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, all of our construction's happening kind of inside of those, so we won't be touching or affecting those at all. They'll be there throughout the construction and thereafter.
I saw a question from Gladys. I'm sorry, Jeremy, but am I stepping on your line?
Yeah, there's one other that she had, which is, I guess the appropriate way to ask it is, where are you making the connection to the power grid? How are you doing that?
I'll answer that. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. From the substation, the power will leave near 29th Street and run 2 blocks on 2nd Avenue to the Gowanus substation and connect to the grid there.
Thank you.
Short distance.
We have much grid infrastructure in Sunset Park already for you. It must have been factoring into your decision making. So John, you got another question?
I think Antoinette had raised her hand first.
Oh, Antoinette, how are you? Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi everyone, thank you. So I just had 3 quick comments/questions. The first was in response to Eduardo's comment. The community board does have a community engagement chair or position that is on the executive committee. And I think if the chair, if Dan or David, if you could, it might be a good idea to connect Equinor with Cesar just to ensure community engagement and anything like that. That's just one idea. And then secondly, I just had some had two quick questions. Thank you for mentioning the community grant. I see that it's a $5 million grant. I was just curious to know, is that a one-time grant or is there plans to financially renew that grant moving forward? And also I see that Equinor had made about 75 billion in profit last year. And I was just curious if there could be any conversations to allocate more funding to that grant.
So thank you. So on that one, that's going to be one of the questions that I don't know that the group assembled here is the group that has the information on it. But if you want, we can reach out to you after the fact with the right person at Equinor. We could give you more information on that grant program, unless anybody else on the team who's with us tonight has any other information. But that might be one that we'd be best to get back to you on. So I see in the chat, it's who can we follow up with? If you want to email that email address that's on your screen there, empirewind@equinor.com, we'll make sure that we channel it to the right person at Equinor.
And then
John,
thank you for your suggestion about connecting with Cesar. I'll make a point of that with Dan. Thank you. It's the perfectly right thing to do. Yes.
Mr. Santori.
Thank you. Just briefly, just a comment, and I just wanted to make this comment while EDC is on the line. I appreciate this presentation. Obviously, there are many other questions. I have other questions, but I appreciate this presentation. I appreciate the ongoing engagement that has happened regarding this project, and I credit EDC for that, and I also credit Equinor. And I would just like to say that it's very concerning to me how little engagement has gone on regarding the Made in New York campus, which is not far from this project and is also enormous, 1.5 million square feet, $323 million in public funding. And there doesn't seem to be any sort of parallel engagement going on regarding the design, the expansion, and the future of that project. So just a comment, I'll keep bringing that up, but I seriously hope that this community will advocate for a significant change in the relationship to the Made in New York campus in the same way that it's been advocating for more engagement with Equinor and more dialogue regarding Equinor's plans. Thank you. That's my comment on that matter.
Here, here.
Yeah. Christine, you still on the call?
Yeah. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Hey, all of EDC is on the call. Okay, I just want you to note what John just said. We are due some updates and maybe a meeting on the Made in New York. We have a lot of EDC properties, and they're all kind of either being developed or redeveloped at the same time. So, got to juggle these balls. And so, and I want to say that just keep that in mind over at EDC.
Yes, as always, we're happy to come and present at the community board, provide updates, discuss any of our projects on the waterfront.
Right. Well, we'll be in touch about Made in New York. A lot of people want to know what's next there. For Equinor, for when you come back with this presentation, maybe not in March, maybe April, we have an upland community that has an economy too that we like to pay attention to. We sometimes neglect it because we have such an active waterfront. So maybe April. Jeremy, were there any more questions from the board or from any other guests?
I don't see any additional hands up.
Okay, with that, I'd like to thank Equinor and EDC and go into a new or old business in this committee and then close her out. So you guys are off the hook for tonight.
Well, thank you all for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
Dan, I can raise my hand on a new business item. I just want to inform this committee, and then later we'll inform the full board. In the last fiscal year, there was an Avenue NYC grant offered to 3 organizations in our district: Brooklyn Chinese American Association, Asian Americans for Equality, and the Sunset Park Bid. We conducted field outreach and surveys. Dan, you're intimately familiar with that, I know. But there is now published and publicly available a commercial district needs assessment report about Sunset Park as a whole, taking into account 8th, 7th, 5th, and 3rd Avenues and several major cross streets. It's a format report established by the Department of Small Business Services and addresses topics like commercial retail vacancy, street conditions, temperature checks on consumers and merchants, and other topics of interest. That's available at the SBS website and on the BIDS website as a link now today. And it might be, I know Sunset Park is a much studied district. We have lots of assessments and studies going on, health, commercial, and otherwise, but this one is a nice, clean snapshot of the district and available for the public's use at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Great job. Great job. Sticking up for the neighborhood. Came with a great video. It's a few months old.
Dear,
David.
no. Whatever you do, don't inflict your eyes on my pink T-shirt.
I love that. It's so summer in Sunset Park, that video. Go to Shop Your City, Sunset Park. You can find it on YouTube. Is there anything else from our members? John?
I do have a matter, but I'm happy to wait if there are other people who would like to speak first. And also, David, I'm sorry, just quickly, can we get a copy of that report?
Yeah, it's a PDF freely available online. If you CBNA Commercial District Needs Assessment at SBS. And there are similar reports for other neighborhoods, which I find interesting because it's not exactly benchmarking or exact peer-to-peer analysis, but it's interesting to look at Woodhaven or Upper Manhattan or other neighborhoods that are roughly analogous in some ways to Sunset Park and see how their reports shaped up. So I'll try to find a link and drop it in the chat at the moment. And I'm going to go off camera for just that purpose.
Okay. What else you got, John?
So if there are no other comments, I don't see any others. So I'll just bring up my new business request. So this is something that I brought up before regarding committee operations, and I think it'll help everybody. I'm asking the committee to agree on a way of setting agendas for the meetings and of deciding how often the committee meets. And I'm open to, personally, I would love to hear people's thoughts, but I think a simple request would be that we discuss committee agendas and meetings at the meetings themselves and see if there's a consensus about when we should meet again and what we should be meeting at. And that if there is discussion that's required in between meetings, or if things come up that require being immediately addressed, that there be some sort of dialogue between the chairs and the committee members and a chance for people to weigh in and share their thoughts, so that we can, again, try to establish consensus and a clear understanding of how often the committee meets and that people are behind the agendas and behind the frequency of meetings. So I'm requesting that the committee either discuss that. Well, yeah, I'm requesting that the committee discuss that now so that there's no ambiguity going forward about how we're going to establish our meetings and agendas.
Anybody else? Okay, there it is. It's noted in the minutes, John. And again, I would only add to that. Antoinette, go ahead.
Just to weigh in, so the Housing Committee has committed to meeting monthly, and we have dates on hold until the end of, not the end of the year, but the end of the session. And then we also plan on working with committee members during meetings to finalize the discussion topics that we're going to be having. So we're actually going to have a dedicated meeting where we're going to hash out, you know, what presentations and discussion topics that we're planning to have together as a group. So just brainstorming the calendar with the understanding that things come up and that, you know, we also have to be flexible, but being open and making sure that there's transparency. So I just wanted to share what's going on the Housing Committee end.
Thanks.
That sounds like a good example. I will state just here for the group, on that theme of transparency, I would personally have a strong desire to do the discussion and agenda setting within the context of meetings that are on the public record, that are accessible by general committee board and public attendees, so that happens, you know, in daylight with folks as a matter of regular order. I mean, everybody's always welcome to, you know, send ideas and have exchanges. There's no problem there. But when it comes to actually setting the agenda, the timing, the dates, and all that, it feels much more comfortable for me if the public is participant in that and can see it on record in this way.
Do you mean, David, do you mean to say you would like to see the discussion of the time? Well, the time is usually 6:30, but the date of the week,
Yeah,
just 1 second. The date of the week, down to the date of the week, we should be discussing at the meeting for the next meeting. And for the meetings after that.
My comment is directed towards agenda topic setting. You know, making sure that, like, if we're saying, hey, you know, let's meet at this interval, that's a general agreement. We have to sort this out with the community board schedule and not make Jeremy's life impossible also in terms of getting people scheduled. So that's just the mechanics of it. But when it comes to saying, like, okay, as a theme, let's address our upland communities, as you said earlier, or let's address this topic or that. And we do the air traffic control on that, in addition to the things that roll in that we you know, have agencies come and ask about. You know, maybe we can do that as an open discussion and sort it out that way. That's my.
Well, that's what new business is. If you have new business and you say, you know what, can we revisit the Made in New York campus? I said, you know what, it's a great idea.
Precisely.
Jeremy and I are going to discuss that. That sounds, yeah. So anybody has new business for the next meeting, please let me know. John.
I do. Does Amel want to comment? She had written in the chat, I'm aligned.
Yeah, so I guess what I meant by that is that I like the idea Antoinette brought up. It sounds like there's a planning meeting that occurs where you talk about the agenda that might be in subsequent meetings, setting kind of priority on the topics. So I like the idea of having maybe a dedicated meeting up front, whether it's, you know, public is fine, where we kind of plan out some of the topics and have a brainstorm session. I like that.
Well, would you like a Google Doc? You can share your ideas, Amel, with the rest of the group.
Yeah, I think
John, did Amel sign up for your Google group?
A Google group is an email list.
John, you sent that group list you sent out with ideas. Did Amel sign up for it?
Well, you don't sign up for a Google Doc. You mean, did she post on the document?
Amel, did you see the Google Doc John sent?
Is this the one that, no, this might not be Catherine Walsh's. This is different. So probably not. No.
There have been no comments.
John, could you do me a favor, John? Why don't you send everyone here, because I think I sent everyone here a copy of the Google Doc for the ideas. We'll keep checking in on them. And in new business at the next committee meeting, maybe we can go over that Google Doc and say who's got the ideas. And we're live on Facebook, right, Jeremy?
Mm-hmm.
We are, okay. Just want to make sure we're public discussing this. Okay. So John, all right, so you're gonna resend that Google Doc.
Yes.
I'll resend it to you. Mel, please, please feel free to utilize that and bring your ideas about what we should be talking about.
I like that. I must have
yeah.
missed that, but just any kind of forum where we can just put in stuff when something comes to mind, and then we can always discuss it in these meetings. I love what Antoinette said about planning up front, in whichever forum, whether it's a Google Doc or in this meeting, sounds good to me.
Okay. If there's not, John, make it quick, please.
So I would like to request that the committee meet as soon as possible for a meeting that focuses exclusively on agenda setting and priorities for 2023. And I'm requesting that we host that meeting either in February or March.
I take your suggestion.
So what happens? Can you explain what happens now? So there's been a suggestion. Could we ask if should I put it on that document? Are we going to wait to see if anybody agrees? What happens?
Definitely put it on the document.
Okay. Is it something you could speak to? Do the chairs
Actually, what I'd like to do, because I want to test out your idea for that document, because you were pushing it for a while, put that idea out of the document, and everyone here at the committee who obviously has access to a screen, please respond to John's idea by that document. Okay?
Hey, can you resend the document, Dan?
I will resend it. I will resend the document. Please resend it to me, Antoinette.
I know it's already 8 o'clock and we went through a whole presentation, but I'm just wondering what. Oh no, never mind. I apologize. I retract.
So
okay.
I'll resend the document.
Resend that to me. All right. Is anyone else?
So
all right. John, we're gonna wrap this up. Can I have a motion to adjourn from someone?
But I'm sorry, Chair. Can I just clarify something?
What is it, John? Clarify.
Well, so if there are, say, 2 people that post on the document, yes, I'd like to have this meeting. Is there any sort of established process by
John,
which?
if there are 2 people that respond to it or more, please let me know via email.
So
okay?
is the principle that if there's some sort of
John, if there are 2 people or more who respond to it, please let me know. Okay?
And before we end the meeting, can I just ask a clarifying question just so I understand? So for next steps, are we going to have a meeting soon just to go over agenda building for the rest of the year?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
And I'm just mentioning this because there's a lot of topics that have been raised by the community, by the housing. There are a lot of issues that have been posted by and brought up by members of the community that have been brought to the attention of the housing committee. And it feels like we have taken on a lot in committing to host workshops. And I think it would be helpful if we can, work with other committee chairs to make sure that.
That sounds like a great idea.
They're also working, you know what I mean?
Yeah, send me an email about an idea where we can work together as committees. And we'll go right on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it would be great if we all as committees can commit to meeting regularly.
We should, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm sorry. I just want. I think.
Is there a motion? Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
may I?
Motion made by Gladys Bruno.
I would really like to clarify one more thing.
No, John, we can clarify, Antoinette, we can clarify all night. Please send your emails and comments to me about a collaboration between committees. And John, please resend me that email about the Google Docs, and I will resend it to everybody here and ask them to respond directly to you and everyone else that Google Doc has been shared with.
All right.
Okay. Okay, guys, good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe.